There comes a moment in every relationship where the relentless giving, the endless chasing, meets its quiet stillness. You, the super empath, have done all you could, loved, understood, healed, and endured. But there is a sacred point where trying no longer serves the soul. And it is at this very stillness that the avoidant breaks no contact. Understand this, it is never about power. It is never about control. It is about absence. When you stop seeking them, when you step into your own divine rhythm, you create a vacuum, a space that awakens a long-forgotten awareness in the avoidant. They feel the weight of what they let slip through their fingers, the presence of your energy, your attention, your care, once a given, now becomes a reflection of what they are missing. You see, avoidants are not immune to loss. Their hearts, though armored, are mirrors. They reflect back only what is given, and when you withdraw, they are forced to confront the reality they have avoided. And in that confrontation, something awakens, a quiet panic, a subtle longing, a recognition of the value they once ignored. This is the divine paradox. The more you stop trying, the more you illuminate your worth. The magnetism of your detachment becomes undeniable. You are no longer the pursuer, you are the prize. And in that cosmic dance, they come to see what they cannot hold, not because you chased them, but because you honored your own light. In that stillness, the avoidant meets themselves. They meet the patterns they ran from, the loneliness they masked, the truths they ignored. They confront the illusions of control they clung to, and they realize that the dynamics have shifted beyond their manipulation. This is the power of your sovereignty. The quiet, unwavering presence of a soul who has learned that love is not begging and respect is not demanded. And so, when they break no contact, it is not your victory alone. It is a testament to your alignment with divine timing, with cosmic wisdom, and with the eternal principle that some connections are not forced, they are awakened. It is not about them finding you, it is about you embodying the truth of your own existence, and in that embodiment, the universe orchestrates what must unfold. Remember this, stepping back is not loss, it is liberation. Releasing the effort is not weakness, it is power. Loving without attachment is not emptiness, it is mastery. And when they return, it is not because they controlled the situation, it is because the energy you carried, the grace you embodied, and the light you held has reached them in ways words never could. The lesson is clear, the avoidant cannot return to what they never truly understood until you stop giving them what they took for granted. And in your stillness, your divine essence, your unmatched empathy, they awaken to the truth, not just about you, but about themselves. Stand firm, step back, shine your light, and let the universe work its perfect, transformative rhythm. For in the silence of your withdrawal, the avoidant is drawn, not to control, but to reflection, not to possess, but to awaken. And in that awakening, they may finally see what was always meant to be recognized, the irreplaceable power of a soul that honors itself above all else. Detachment is one of the most misunderstood forces in human relationships. Many think it means indifference, coldness, or withdrawing love, but true detachment is the highest form of presence. It is the conscious choice to honor your own energy, your own boundaries, and your own inner peace without being consumed by the actions or reactions of another. For the super empath, detachment is not abandonment, it is recognition. It is seeing the patterns, understanding the dynamics, and stepping back in alignment with divine wisdom. The avoidant, who is often fueled by pursuit and the attention of others, reacts not when you chase, but when you release. It is in this release, in this quiet assertion of self-worth, that the avoidant first truly notices the gravity of what they are missing. When you continue to chase, continue to invest without reciprocity, the avoidant remains in their familiar dance of push and pull. They do not need to change. They do not need to reflect. Their behaviors, however painful to you, are predictable and comfortable. But detachment interrupts this cycle. It is a pause in the rhythm they have grown accustomed to, a vacuum that cannot be ignored. In the silence of your absence, the avoidant experiences a sensation they cannot name. It is subtle, but it shakes the foundations of their habitual avoidance. They are suddenly confronted with the idea that the connection is no longer under their control and that their choices may have consequences they cannot manipulate away. Detachment is also the ultimate demonstration of self-respect. When you stop trying to force attention, Stop trying to bend reality to your desires and stop sacrificing your own emotional equilibrium. You are sending a message that transcends words. You are saying, I am whole, I am enough, my energy is sacred, and I will not offer it where it is not honored. This is a lesson the avoidant can rarely learn through persistence. They only respond to the presence of absence, to the recognition of a power that is not theirs to take, to the undeniable value of a soul that refuses to be diminished. There is a divine intelligence in detachment. It operates on principles that are larger than human reasoning. The universe has a way of orchestrating awakenings in moments of stillness. When the super empath steps back, they are not punishing or testing. Their withdrawal is aligned with the natural order of growth. The avoidant, once faced with the emptiness left by your detachment, begins an internal dialogue they could not have had while being pursued. Questions emerge, reflections surface, emotions that were suppressed or ignored come to light. This is not a response to anger, guilt, or fear. It is the first gentle nudge towards self-awareness that can lead to transformation. The beauty of detachment is that it creates a magnetic pull without force. It is not about chasing validation. It is about radiating authenticity. The avoidant may feel the urge to reach out, but this outreach is no longer a result of manipulation, fear, or habit. It arises from an awakening triggered by your presence turned absence. Detachment is the silent authority of someone who has mastered their own heart. It communicates a level of self-possession that cannot be ignored. Detachment also teaches patience, another divine principle. It reminds the empath that love is not measured by immediate results or reaction. It is measured by alignment with one's own truth. In releasing the need to be seen, validated, or pursued, the empath demonstrates that their energy is a sacred resource, not a tool for coercion. This act alone shifts the dynamic entirely. The avoidant, once shielded by distance and deflection, is confronted with the undeniable reality that the connection is no longer theirs to take lightly. Ultimately, the power of detachment is transformative. It is the alchemy of love and wisdom combined. It honors your soul, it awakens the avoidant, and it aligns with the higher principles of growth, consciousness, and divine timing. In this sacred stillness, the avoidant begins to sense what persistence could never make them feel: the irreplaceable presence of someone who loves fully but loves themselves first. The dynamics between a super empath and an avoidant are often misunderstood, yet they are guided by subtle laws of energy and reflection. One of the most powerful forces at work in these relationships is the mirror of value. Avoidants, whether consciously or unconsciously, measure their own worth not by internal alignment or self-knowledge, but by the attention, devotion, and energy they receive from others, particularly from those who see them in their entirety. The super empath, in their extraordinary capacity to feel, understand, and nurture, often becomes the living mirror of the avoidant's own value. When the empath invests, reaches, and pours energy into the connection, the avoidant may take it for granted. They may flee or push away, believing that such care will always be available, never realizing that the mirror they are looking into reflects more than just their surface. It reflects the depth of their own heart, the true measure of who they are. When the super empath stops trying, stops leaning into the effort of connection, the avoidant is suddenly confronted with a reflection they cannot ignore. The mirror no longer moves to accommodate their deflection or avoidance. It is steady, unwavering, and complete. And in that steadiness, the avoidant begins to see themselves as they truly are, without the distortion of constant pursuit. They may notice the absence of attention, the lack of validation, and the silence where once there was energy. In this silence, the mirror of value becomes undeniable. The avoidant realizes, often for the first time, that they were only ever aware of the empath's presence when it served their sense of control or comfort, not because they truly valued it. This is the sacred power of the mirror. It does not force insight, but it awakens it. Avoidants cannot help but recognize what is missing when the reflection is no longer available. They are confronted with the reality that the love, attention, and care they once received was not infinite. It was a choice, and choices that are withdrawn speak louder than words. The empath, by stepping back, allows the avoidant to witness the consequences of their own patterns, to face the emptiness left by their avoidance, and to finally acknowledge the cost of disregarding the value they once took for granted. What the avoidant sees in this mirror is often uncomfortable. It is not just the absence of the empath, it is the absence of something essential within themselves. They see the spaces where they have avoided emotional growth, the moments they chose flight over reflection, and the fears that have dictated their choices. The mirror shows them what they have denied, their capacity for intimacy, their longing for connection, and the depth of their own emotional hunger. This confrontation can be unsettling, but it is necessary. True growth and awakening are never comfortable. They are transformative. The mirror of value also serves another divine purpose. It highlights the empath's sovereignty. The super empath is not simply a source of care. They are a conscious, self-aware being who chooses when and how to invest their energy. Their withdrawal is not punishment. It is a declaration of self-respect. In reflecting this, the avoidant cannot help but recognize the power of someone who loves fully but refuses to be diminished. They are drawn to it, compelled by it, because it represents a level of alignment and integrity they have yet to embody themselves. In essence, the mirror of value is a sacred lesson in self-awareness. It shows the avoidant that attention is not entitlement, love is not guaranteed, and connection is not something to be taken lightly. It reveals that the energy they once ignored was a reflection of the empath's respect for themselves, and that by disregarding, they were also disregarding a part of their own potential. In the stillness of withdrawal, in the quiet of detachment, the avoidant finally encounters the undeniable truth: the empath was never just giving for their sake. They were giving as a reflection of divine principles, integrity, and self-worth. And in that reflection, the avoidant is compelled to confront their own value, or the lack thereof, in ways that words alone could never achieve. Fear of finality is one of the most powerful forces that govern the behavior of the avoidant. While they may seem aloof, distant, or detached, beneath their exterior lies a profound fear of endings, an anxiety that the connection they have avoided, neglected, or resisted could reach a point of irreversibility. Avoidants often mask this fear with deflection, rationalization, or withdrawal, creating the illusion of freedom and control. Yet, when the super empath steps back, stops trying, and no longer offers the constant bridge of emotional access, this fear surfaces. It is in the stillness, the absence, and the silence that the avoidant is forced to confront the terrifying possibility that the connection might end forever. The avoidance strategy that once gave them comfort now feels like a trap. They have been so accustomed to controlling the ebb and flow of attention that the sudden cessation by the empath is disorienting. Without the familiar dynamic of pursuit and retreat, they experience a new reality, one in which the empath's energy is no longer guaranteed. And this uncertainty awakens a deep instinctual fear. The fear that the love they dismissed, the care they ignored, and the bond they resisted could vanish, leaving them with the stark truth of what they lost. Fear of finality is uniquely powerful because it touches the core of human vulnerability. Avoidants often avoid intimacy to protect themselves from perceived suffocation, emotional demands, or dependency. They fear being consumed, losing autonomy, or facing the intensity of emotional transparency. Yet, when the empath stops trying, the tables are turned. The avoidant is confronted with the very reality they sought to escape, that the connection is not infinite, that boundaries cannot always be bypassed, and that absence carries weight. In that moment, they realize that the consequences of their avoidance are real and potentially permanent. This fear is often what drives them to break no contact. It is not a spontaneous act of love, nor is it a conscious acknowledgement of the empath's worth. It is the instinctive response to the possibility of irrevocable loss. The avoidant feels a pull that they cannot rationalize away. The finality of the situation forces them to act, even if only to reassure themselves that the door is not entirely closed. This is a critical distinction. The avoidant does not return because of emotional growth alone, but because the absence of certainty triggers the urgent need to preserve what they once undervalued. From a higher perspective, the fear of finality is a lesson in alignment and self-respect. The super empath's withdrawal is not manipulation. It is the natural consequence of boundaries, of honoring their own energy, and of stepping into divine timing. The avoidance fear is simply the mirror reflecting what they took for granted. The understanding that connection, love, and presence are not commodities to be exploited, but sacred energies to be respected. The empath's choice to stop trying illuminates this truth, and the avoidant, even unconsciously, is confronted with the consequences of ignoring it. Fear of finality also encourages reflection. In the quiet absence of the empath, the avoidant is faced with questions they have long avoided. What did I truly lose? What did I fail to value? What is my own capacity for intimacy? These reflections, though uncomfortable, are catalysts for awakening. They challenge the avoidant to recognize the fragility of connection and the significance of respect, reciprocity, and awareness. Ultimately, fear of finality demonstrates the profound wisdom inherent in stepping back. It is not about control, punishment, or proving a point. It is about creating the conditions under which the avoidant can awaken to the reality of the bond they once resisted. The stillness of the empath, the absence of pursuit, and the conscious honoring of one's own worth become the sacred triggers that confront the avoidant with the truth of impermanence. And in that confrontation, they are compelled to reconsider, reflect, and sometimes return, not out of manipulation, but out of an awakened recognition that what they nearly lost was irreplaceable, and that absence, more than presence, reveals the value of what was always sacred. The magnetism of indifference is one of the most profound and misunderstood principles in human relationships, particularly between the super empath and the avoidant. Many mistake indifference for apathy, coldness, or lack of care, but in truth, indifference is a demonstration of strength, sovereignty, and unshakable self-respect. When the super empath stops chasing, stops pleading, and stops trying to bend reality to fit the desires of the avoidant, they are not withdrawing love. They are stepping into a higher vibration. This vibration is magnetic, not because it manipulates, but because it radiates authenticity and alignment with one's own truth. The avoidant, who has been conditioned to respond to pursuit, begins to sense the weight of a presence that no longer seeks their validation, and in that realization they are drawn in ways that persistence alone could never achieve. Avoidants are often fueled by the chase. They respond to attention, need, and desire, yet they rarely engage with true depth or introspection while they feel in control. The more someone chases them, the more they can remain detached, safe behind the walls of avoidance. But indifference disrupts this dynamic entirely. When the super empath steps back, ceases to seek approval, and no longer offers the comfort of constant availability, the avoidant is confronted with a truth they cannot escape. The connection exists on terms that are no longer dictated by them. It is in this space of calm detachment that the empath becomes magnetic, not because of any external effort, but because they embody their own worth and sovereignty. This magnetism is deeply transformative. The avoidant, accustomed to controlling the emotional flow, suddenly experiences an absence of control. The energy they once relied upon to gauge and manipulate relationship is no longer there, and with it comes a subtle, almost unconscious pull. They begin to notice what they have been taking for granted: the empathy, the care, the unwavering presence that they could not match or mirror. The super empath's indifference is paradoxically the most compelling form of attention because it is not needy, not desperate, and not attached to outcomes. It is pure, grounded, and aligned with divine principles. Indifference also serves as a mirror, reflecting back the avoidant's own patterns and unacknowledged desires. When the empath is emotionally unattached, the avoidant cannot hide behind excuses, distractions, or deflection. They are forced to face the reality that the connection they resisted and pushed away is not infinite, and that the person they once could take for granted is now moving in alignment with their own worth. This realization stirs a longing that is genuine, not manipulative, a recognition that the empath's energy is sacred, finite, and not something to be treated lightly. Furthermore, the magnetism of indifference is rooted in divine timing. The super empath is not acting out of strategy or manipulation, they are embodying a universal principle. When one aligns fully with their own energy and refuses to compromise their self-respect, the universe responds. The avoidant, triggered by this shift, is compelled to reassess, reflect, and sometimes return, not because they can control the situation, but because the empath's authenticity has awakened something within them that they had ignored. It is the quiet power of presence without need, love without desperation, and strength without force. Indifference teaches a higher lesson that connection cannot be forced, and that true influence comes from being fully aligned with one's own soul. The avoidant may attempt to re-engage, but the dynamic has changed. The energy is no longer about chasing or manipulation. It is about mutual recognition, respect, and consciousness. The empath's indifference does not close the door. It illuminates the truth. Love, care, and energy are to be valued, not exploited, and the absence of attention becomes the catalyst for reflection, awakening, and growth. Ultimately, the magnetism of indifference is a sacred force. It draws without need, attracts without coercion, and teaches without judgment. It is the divine alchemy of presence and absence combined, and in this alchemy, the avoidant is compelled to confront themselves, their patterns, and the undeniable value of the one who chose themselves first. Self-confrontation is a force that most avoidants unconsciously resist. They move through life deflecting, distracting, and distancing themselves from the truths that would require deep introspection. Yet when the super empath stops trying, when the endless attempts to reach, to guide, and to bridge the gap are no longer present, the avoidant is forced into a confrontation with themselves. A confrontation they can no longer avoid. This moment is not about punishment, manipulation, or revenge. It is a reflection of divine principles at work. Absence creates clarity, stillness invites reflection, and boundaries illuminate truth. The avoidant, who has spent so long projecting their discomfort outward, suddenly faces the inner realities they have hidden from, their fear, their emotional patterns, their unhealed wounds, and their unacknowledged needs. The super empath, in their quiet withdrawal, becomes a mirror that reflects not just absence, but the consequences of avoidance. When the avoidant senses that the energy they once relied on, the attention, the care, the unwavering emotional presence, is no longer available, they are confronted with their own internal voids. This confrontation is subtle at first, manifesting as unease, a nagging thought, or the faint realization that something vital has shifted. Yet over time, it intensifies into a deep self-recognition. They begin to ask questions they have long avoided. Why did I push this away? What did I fail to appreciate? How did my fear of intimacy distort my choices? This process of self-confrontation is transformative because it is initiated not by force, but by the empath's alignment with their own worth. By stopping the pursuit, the empath is not rejecting the avoidant. They are simply honoring their own energy, their own emotional integrity, and their own boundaries. And in honoring themselves, they compel the avoidant to face the truths they have ignored. Avoidants, who often operate from patterns of self-protection and deflection, cannot continue their usual avoidance when the source of energy they depended on is no longer available. The absence acts like a spotlight, illuminating the areas of their life and heart that have been in shadow. Self-confrontation triggered in this way is often uncomfortable. It may awaken feelings of guilt, regret, or longing. The avoidant may feel a sudden urgency to reach out, to repair, or to reclaim what they have neglected. This is not mere reaction, it is the beginning of reflection. The absence of the empath forces the avoidant to reckon with the patterns that once allowed them to run from responsibility, intimacy, and emotional truth. They are faced with questions they cannot escape, and the answers they begin to uncover are often profound. They realize that the very energy they once dismissed or resisted was a reflection of the love, patience, and integrity they themselves lacked internally. This confrontation is also an opportunity for growth. When the avoidant recognizes the depth of what they nearly lost, they are invited to see the ways in which their behaviors have created patterns of distance and disconnection. They are given the chance to understand themselves more fully, to acknowledge the ways in which fear has dictated their choices, and to cultivate the self-awareness necessary for genuine intimacy. The super empath, by stepping back, creates the conditions for this awakening without ever pushing, insisting, or demanding change. The confrontation is triggered by the empath's presence turned absence, allowing the avoidant to meet their own truth on their own terms. Ultimately, self-confrontation triggered by the empath's withdrawal is a sacred, transformative process. It demonstrates the power of boundaries, the value of self-alignment, and the divine principle that presence without need and withdrawal without resentment can awaken the deepest truths within another. The avoidant is forced to face themselves, not because of blame or shame, but because the empath's integrity and self-respect illuminate the reality of their choices. And in that illumination, the avoidant is compelled to reckon with what they avoided for so long, awakening to truths about themselves and the connection they once took for granted. The illusion of control is one of the most subtle yet powerful dynamics in the relationship between a super empath and an avoidant. Avoidants often navigate life and love under the belief that they are in control. Their emotions, their boundaries, and even the dynamics of connection are carefully managed to protect themselves from vulnerability. They may withdraw, deflect, or create distance to maintain a sense of safety, believing that by controlling the flow of attention, they are safeguarding their freedom and autonomy. Yet the moment the super empath stops trying, this carefully constructed illusion begins to crumble. The avoidant realizes, sometimes for the first time, that the connection is not theirs to manipulate, the emotions are not theirs to dictate, and the energy they once assumed they could take for granted is now beyond their reach. This shattering of control is both disorienting and illuminating. Avoidants are accustomed to shaping the emotional landscape of their relationships, using their distance and unpredictability as shields against intimacy and accountability. The super empath's withdrawal disrupts this balance. It is no longer a game of push and pull where the avoidant can determine the rhythm. Instead, they encounter the stillness and sovereignty of someone who has chosen to honor their own worth above the dynamics of pursuit. This absence confronts the avoidant with the profound realization that the connection they relied on is not dependent on their whims. It exists on terms of mutual respect and alignment, not manipulation. When the illusion of control is shattered, the avoidant experiences a powerful internal shift. Suddenly, the comfort of predictable patterns is replaced by uncertainty, and uncertainty awakens reflection. They begin to recognize the ways they relied on external energy to validate their self-worth and to shield themselves from emotional growth. The absence of the empath's chasing energy forces the avoidant to face the truth that they cannot command attention, demand care, or dictate the emotional reality of another. This confrontation is subtle yet profound. It destabilizes their habitual defenses while offering a mirror into their own patterns of avoidance and detachment. The shattering of control is not intended as punishment, it is a reflection of divine principles at work. The super empath, by stepping back, is demonstrating the power of aligned presence, integrity, and self-respect. They are embodying a higher truth, that energy, attention, and love are sacred and cannot be coerced, manipulated, or taken for granted. This demonstration disrupts the avoidant's habitual sense of security, not to harm them, but to awaken awareness. They are compelled to see that the connection they once assumed they could influence is now moving beyond their control. And in that movement, they confront the limits of their own patterns and behaviors. This realization often triggers an internal awakening. The avoidant begins to ask questions they have avoided for years. How have I been avoiding intimacy? How have I relied on manipulation to feel safe? What have I taken for granted in the presence of someone who genuinely cares? The shattering of control acts as a catalyst for self-reflection, compelling them to recognize their own limitations, fears, and the ways in which avoidance has prevented authentic connection. It is in this space of awareness that growth begins. Not because of external pressure, but because the empath's aligned withdrawal illuminates the truth the avoidant could no longer ignore. Ultimately, the breaking of the illusion of control is transformative. It reveals the sacred power of detachment, the importance of self-respect, and the divine principle that love and attention cannot be commanded. They can only be freely given and consciously received. The avoidant, confronted with the loss of control, is drawn into self-reflection, compelled to recognize the consequences of their patterns, and awaken to the value of the connection they once assumed they could dictate. In this awakening, the dynamic shifts. The power no longer lies in manipulation or avoidance, but in authenticity, presence, and alignment with higher principles. Divine timing is a principle that governs the deepest aspects of human connection, yet it is often invisible to those caught in the turbulence of emotion. For the super empath and the avoidant, divine timing manifests in ways that cannot be controlled or predicted. When the avoidant returns after the empath has stopped trying, it is rarely a matter of coincidence, manipulation, or chance. It is the universe orchestrating a moment of awakening, reflection, and alignment. The super empath's decision to step back to honor their own energy and boundaries creates a space in which cosmic lessons can unfold. In this sacred pause, the avoidant is not simply responding to absence. They are being guided by forces larger than themselves, nudged toward insight that they could not have accessed while the empath was persistently reaching. The return of the avoidant in such moments is less about them seeking the empath and more about the universe facilitating growth. The empath's stillness acts as a catalyst for self-reflection, forcing the avoidant to reckon with the patterns, fears, and unhealed wounds that have long dictated their behavior. They confront the reality that their avoidance cannot prevent connection forever, and in this confrontation, they are given the opportunity to awaken to truths about themselves and the relationship they have taken for granted. This is the profound wisdom of divine timing. The universe does not rush growth. It orchestrates circumstances that compel awareness in the exact moment a soul is ready to receive it. Cosmic lessons embedded in this timing are intricate yet precise. The avoidant is confronted with absence, not to punish, but to teach. They are given a mirror of what was always present, the unwavering love, patience, and presence of the super empath, but they encounter it in a context that challenges their assumptions, patterns, and sense of control. The universe aligns experiences in ways that reveal the sacred truth. Energy, attention, and emotional availability are not infinite resources, and those who honor themselves and their boundaries operate in a rhythm that cannot be dictated. The avoidance return is often a recognition of this truth, an unconscious acknowledgement that the connection they resisted has a depth, value, and integrity they can no longer ignore. Divine timing also underscores the empath's journey of growth. By stepping back, the super empath aligns with principles of self-respect, discernment, and divine purpose. They are not acting from anger, fear, or desire for control. They are acting from wisdom, clarity, and alignment with their highest good. In doing so, they model a higher form of love, one that teaches without coercion, influences without manipulation, and radiates integrity without demand. The avoidant, in encountering the absence and sovereignty of the empath, is confronted with the cosmic lesson that true connection requires mutual respect, awareness, and conscious engagement. This principle also illuminates the impermanence and sacredness of relationships. The empath's withdrawal is a demonstration of the natural order. Love is not forced, attention is not owed, and energy is not a commodity to be exploited. The avoidance response, guided by the unfolding of divine timing, becomes a reflection of their readiness to engage with these principles. They may return, not because the empath chased them, but because the universe has created conditions in which reflection, accountability, and awareness are unavoidable. In this process, both souls are given the opportunity to align with truth, growth, and higher consciousness. Ultimately, divine timing and cosmic lessons are the forces that transform avoidance into awakening. The avoidance return is less about them and more about the alignment of circumstances with universal principles. It is a reminder that life unfolds according to sacred rhythms and that true connection is orchestrated not by fear, manipulation, or pursuit, but by presence, integrity, and timing beyond human control. The empath, by honoring themselves, activates these principles, creating a space where growth, reflection, and conscious engagement are inevitable. In this sacred orchestration, the avoidance awakening becomes a testament to the transformative power of patience, alignment, and the divine order that governs the flow of energy, love, and connection. Thank you for trusting me to guide you through this transformative journey. Your growth and awareness are the true rewards. Goodbye for now, and may your path always be aligned with wisdom, clarity, and divine timing.